All right, well, it's 8:32 Central, so we're going to get this thing rolling. Good morning. My name is Tom Van Sage. I'm a senior fellow at the Midwest Center for Nonprofit Leadership, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the Midwest Center for Nonprofit Leadership's Nonprofit Navigation Series. Today is Harnessing AI for Nonprofit Excellence, featuring Josh Santiago at the Midwest Center for Nonprofit Leadership, based at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. We're so proud to be a catalyst for innovation and collaboration across our civic landscape. Our mission is to strengthen the capacity, impact, and sustainability of Kansas City region's nonprofit sector through cutting-edge research, transformative education, and dynamic leadership development. We envision a Kansas City region powered by a vibrant, resilient, and forward-thinking nonprofit sector where mission-driven organizations and bold leaders unite to foster opportunity, build trust, and champion the well-being of every community. And now we're thrilled to introduce our featured guest speaker this morning, Josh Santiago. He's a powerhouse in strategic transformation and digital innovation with 15 plus years of experience and over $1.1 billion in business performance gains under his belt. Josh brings deep cross-industry expertise from tech and telecom to manufacturing, nonprofits, and beyond. He's worked alongside the likes of BCG, Accenture, and McKinsey, and currently leads strategic initiative at DCG focused on emerging technologies like generative AI, ERP modernization, low-code platforms, and CRM optimization. A proud alum of Emory, Wharton, and the Harvard Business School, Josh also teaches with Power Learn Academy. Outside the boardroom, he's a retired award-winning photographer, avid reader, licensed pilot, and globe-trotting speaker, having delivered talks from Amsterdam to Bangkok on AI, digital transformation, and bold strategies for growth. Get ready for an energizing conversation about how AI can supercharge mission delivery and help your nonprofit lead with vision, innovation, and impact. Josh, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. And thank you, everyone, for your time this morning. I certainly appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to join us. It's certainly a privilege to be here. And I'd like to thank both Tom and Cindy, as well as UMKC, for the opportunity to be here and speak about such a dynamic topic, right? I feel like it's changing 24/7. And so I want to dive in really quickly today and really try to take to ground what a lot of organizations are really trying to capture with AI. I think, and we'll make it a little interactive and we'll ask some questions of you, the audience. And so for those of you who can participate, it's going to be a little bit on the fun side for you there. You'll get to see in real time how everybody's doing it. But hopefully today, I can help everybody walk away with some actionable insights. And so, as Tom already mentioned, I've been doing this for almost 20 years at this point. I know that slide, I keep meaning to update it, but it's getting closer to the 20-year mark. But yeah, I've spent a lot of time speaking on a number of different topics across go-to-market strategy, AI implementations, business application modernization. So I spend a lot of time traveling and doing that both for DCG and for Santiago and Company. So I certainly appreciate the investment that they've made in me and the work that we've done across both the United States and around the world. So about Santiago and Company, I'll give a brief overview of what we do. So we are a management consulting firm that started with AI at the heart of what we do. So the traditional management consulting role, which has been around since the early 19th and 20th century, was really focused on operational performance improvements. And so we decided when we wanted to start the firm, we looked at how do we leverage AI from the very beginning and how do we take that to organizations that really want to expand and grow. And so I've had the unique opportunity to sit in both Fortune 500 as well as some of the smallest organizations in the world and really help drive impact across both strategy and operations, but really with the underlying concept that AI is the future of the globe, and we're all going to be using it. And so we spend a lot of time really developing systems to make sure there's real tangible impact, not just that ooh, it's this cool new tool that I think some of us have experienced. So with that, like I said, I like to make things interactive. And so if you want to pull out your phones, if you can, if you're driving, I don't recommend you do that. Unless you're in a Tesla, I guess, and you've got autopilot. Just kidding. Don't do that. I need to start adding like safety disclosures to my presentations. But scan this, and hopefully, if you've got the opportunity to, as soon as we start getting responses coming in, it should update in real time. So I'd like to know from the audience, how often are you currently using AI? Oh, good. All right, it is working. Perfect. The last time I did this, it didn't work. So it's good to see it working in real time. So good. We've got a fair spread here. It looks like across the board, it looks like 44% using it on a day-to-day basis. Okay, good. Good. 15% have never used it, 17%. So wow, that is really impressive to know. I think that a lot of organizations that I work with, it's a mix just like this. It's seeing the spread across people that are constantly in it every single day and every single hour of the day, and some people who are use it a couple times a week to I've never even cracked the surface, don't really know how to begin. So this is fantastic to see that. Looks like we've got a good amount of responses coming in. And that second question, what are we using, right? So yeah, it looks like ChatGPT, obviously the market leader there. It looks like there's some people that are using Claude. Good. The last time I gave this talk, nobody had ever used Claude before. So I'm really excited to see that in there. Good. Microsoft Copilot, Gemini, and Bing. Good. Okay, perfect. And good. For those of you who selected other, maybe just type in the chat what it is that you're using. I'd love to know kind of what that is. So I know some of it might be Perplexity, some of it might be DeepSeek, some of it might be any of the 150 plus. I almost included a slide that included all of the options that exist out there. And so we'll keep letting this filter in, but I do want to move on. So thank you again for filling this out. There'll be a couple more opportunities to fill these in as we go along. So now, big caveat here. Being a management consultant, there's a lot of times that our decks are extremely dense. And so I'm going to forewarn you now that that is going to be the case here, but I'm not going to read them to you. I am going to give you the opportunity to collect the slides later. That way you can sit and digest the materials. That way you don't have to listen to me drone on reading every single bullet point. But I will give you the opportunity to get a hold of the slide deck itself. That way you can take that away, read it, and digest it at your own time. We'll certainly be able to share that. Awesome. BCG alum. Fantastic. That's awesome. Good. Hopefully we can connect later and we can chat about some fun experiences. So organizations are really experiencing a lot of downward pressure, right? I think every single one of you on the call is well aware of the day-to-day things that everybody's facing, from the uncertainty to funding to some of the conversations about how the tax law might change for nonprofits and what may and may not be included in taxable income, things like the USAID cuts, the federal funding concerns, where we're going to be with that in the next few years, the downward pressure from boards to get more performance out of the organization, the overwhelming need for the organization to understand cybersecurity. I love caveating this because I feel like, especially here in Kansas City, a number of the nonprofits I've spoken to over the last few months have really dealt with an uptick in both deep fakes and audio scamming, as well as just ransomware attacks. And so, there's this outside pressure now that is to modernize the IT stack. And we're not going to talk about that today, but it's one of those things that on top of everything else that you're concerned with and doing, it's also, hey, we now have this to worry about as well. And as AI advances and things like deep fakes and the ability to mimic the cadence of the CEO or mimic the voice of the CFO are going to become concerning, because whether you're a frontline worker or whether you're a senior member of the staff, I think we've all probably received one of those emails that said, oh, by the way, I'm at a meeting and I can't get a hold of you. Can you go run out and get some gift cards for me? I know at least I've seen that about a dozen times from my boss, and it's always quite humorous because I'm like, hey, you want me to go pick up those gift cards? So those are just going to become more and more advanced with AI. So what I want to talk about today is some real practical uses of how organizations can get started with AI and really expand into it. So those five really are donor segmentation, leveraging the data you already have to unlock insights about your donor pools, grant prospecting, using the tools that already are out there and how you can use them to find grants that your organization is mission aligned with so that you can get more funding in a very tight funding market right now. Constituent and board chatbots, right? How do we alleviate some of the pressure that we're all feeling when we get these questions about, hey, where are we at on this, or what's going on with this mission or this program, or what was the last update? And we all spend a lot of time writing reports and updating the board, as well as just volunteers and other individuals. How can we alleviate some of that pressure? We do a lot of this in the corporate world, where we look at customer service and how AI is allowing us to alleviate what we call that first line response. And so it's taking that same thing and implementing it in the nonprofit world so that you can focus on what you need to do on a day-to-day basis, and you can get some of that time back in your day. And then how we gather all the data for the impact that we're accomplishing, and how we build stories around that, and how we can leverage AI to do that. And then obviously volunteer scheduling is a big one. I just was at the Children's Place's annual gala and helping my wife volunteer for that. And there's a lot of moving parts to events, and I can only imagine the complexity that some of these larger scale events have. And I've been to Microsoft events, and I've watched the team there deliver exceptional events for 40,000 plus people. So I can only imagine what trying to coordinate volunteers is like on that same plane. So how you can look at skill sets, how you can look at a number of different tools to really optimize that. And then how do you take that from a pilot and really deliver success across the organization? So we'll look at how we run workshops, how we build out pilot programs to measure success, how we build a full implementation roadmap, and then how we scale that out. So without further ado, I'll kind of dive into some things here. So a lot of nonprofit organizations are really struggling to understand how they can embed it into the core of what they do. And larger size nonprofits are actually doing this at a much faster rate than smaller organizations are. And so we've seen this start to lag out in a lot of organizations, both on the smaller side, but as well as on the larger side. And so it's something that this type of conversation helps address that, right? Because it demystifies what the options are and what the capabilities are. But those that have adopted it feel like it's actually helping the organization. So it's really driving a lot of productivity. And then if we benchmark that against traditional high performance corporations, we see that there's still a lag in donor and customer retention. There's still a gap in overhead, and there's still a significant leadership development gap across both high performance nonprofits and high performance corporations. So how do we close those gaps? Well, again, I believe fully and fundamentally that AI really gives us the ability to accelerate not only things like leadership development, but understanding the pain points that are causing donors to not retain at the organization, and trimming costs. And when I say trimming costs, I want to make it very clear that I don't believe AI is a way to cut staff. I know a lot of organizations, both in the corporate world and the nonprofit world, have had that discussion, right? AI is going to take my job. And I believe fully that AI is a force multiplier and not a cost-cutting measure. I think if you can accomplish 2 and 3x the productivity with the same amount of people you have by giving them the tools to accelerate the work they're doing, you end up far and away ahead of competition, and far and ahead away of driving mission value by leveraging AI, not just as a direct cost-cutting measure. And there are performance improvements that directly go to cost-cutting measures that we can talk about, but I don't think it's wise for an organization to just come in and just absolutely wipe out their staff just because they feel like, oh, we have AI now. So there's a lot of capabilities here, and what we've noticed over the time is that allowing us to embed AI governance and ethics into the organization's core framework, we see between a 15 and a 30% ROI out of that. So I want to pause right there, and I want to understand everybody on the call and what you're facing. And some of the things, now obviously I couldn't put every single option up there, but I tried to capture the broadest swath that I could. But I'd love to know from you what it is that you face on a day-to-day basis. And so we'll give that a second as those responses start to come in. Yep, staff. Yep, that's a big one. Flat donations. I should have said flat and declining, but yeah, demand outpacing resourcing. Yeah. Yeah, these are all very, very common things that I hear on a day-to-day basis. And staff, volunteer, burnout, and turnover is obviously a big one. Those two are typically the leading ones. And so, yeah, so how do we take AI and put that on top of what the organization's already doing to help alleviate that? So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But yeah, this is great. Thank you for everybody that's participating. I'll leave that up for just a second longer, and then we can move on. So diversifying funding, building talent, tech resilience, all things that we have to consider as paramount to this next generation of nonprofits, right? We've come through the COVID era. We've come through a really big shift just overall from how organizations work and how people work and how nonprofits work. And so we're seeing these three mega trends kind of play out, right? Tech resilience. What does that actually mean, right? It means getting rid of that underlying infrastructure that we've kind of carried along for years that's really maybe slowing us down, right? How many of us have applications and systems that don't talk to each other, that haven't in years, that we have to manually get data from? We haven't discussed cybersecurity in a long time, right? Those are things that all play into tech resilience and things like that. So benchmarking and adjusting pay bands, things like that, right? How do we turn over that staff? How do we make sure that staff turnover doesn't continue, right? There's that shift between millennials and Gen Z becoming a larger share of the donor pool, right? Digital campaigns, transparency, all of these are shifting, and we have to really dive into what it is that donors and individuals are expecting from us as nonprofit organizations in the future to be able to give them that experience. And so as we look at how Kansas City plays out in that, right? We've had about $22 billion of revenue to nonprofits. And I thank you, UMKC, for this data. I know obviously there's a couple year gap here. So we did some estimation, and we're looking at about an average of a 2.5% growth rate over the course of the next few years. And so what does that actually mean? Well, it means that organizations can risk about $2.5 billion of unrealized impact if they don't focus on leveraging AI to really capture that, because it's going to become more and more critical as time goes on. So this is just to give it a concept and idea of where Kansas City's at as a whole. So with that, how would you rate your own adoption as it relates to AI today? I know some of you were saying that you use it every day. I think it was about 38% of you were saying you use it every day. Some of you were saying I've never used it. If you had to say we were going to implement AI into the organization today, how would you rate that? How would you rate your readiness to be able to add AI to the organization? Yeah. That's what I expected. That's what I'm seeing across the board, whether it's nonprofit, whether it's for profit. This is what I'm seeing, even in the government sector. This is what we're seeing. Is there is a lack of confidence, and there is a lack of clear direction of understanding what is even possible and where organizations can go with AI. And so don't feel bad. This is very, very common. And so you're not alone in this. And so how do we leverage AI to drive value throughout the organization? That's kind of what I want to talk about, right? And so we start with kind of that initial peer. If we look at the value chain that is fundraising, right? Or the value chain that is the nonprofit sector, right? We start with fundraising, right? And then we go into demand creation, which is stakeholder engagement and awareness and advocacy. And then from there, that really builds in the core components that make up delivery, right? Design and intake and measurement and all of those things. And then you roll that into a feedback loop where you're constantly iterating and you're giving impact stories and you're building in compliance both for donors and regulators and state agencies for those of you that have to deal with that. And then ultimately the end state of this is all supported by shared services like finance and HR and IT, and we can't forget those people. And then below that sits all of the risk and governance factors. But ultimately, all of that drives mission outcome and community impact. So how do we take AI and build that into all of these different areas? Well, I'm going to give you one slide that makes it really simple and easy to digest. Just kidding. It's not. There's a lot to it. So, but again, I'm going to give you this deck, but you can start to see across the value chain, there's a number of different areas where AI can be plugged into, whether it's things like needs assessment and planning. You have tremendous amounts of data sitting in your organization today in what we call unstructured data. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into the technical side of this, but you can think of structured databases or structured data like databases, your CRM system, your financial system. Those are structured databases, right? It's easy to ask for, give me a list of all of our donors, right? Simple. What unstructured data is those one-off emails, the photo of the receipts, the transactional things that just happen in Slack or in Teams or in Google Chat. It's massive quantities of data that really go to the heart of what you do on a day-to-day basis, but there's no way to capture and measure and quantify that. Well, AI is exceptionally good, especially generative AI is exceptionally good at taking large quantities of that unstructured data and being able to feed it into various different things, right? So we'll talk about board management and reporting, how you can pull in impact stories, training and development, how you can use it to upskill employees, how you can use it to write content. 60% of nonprofits that are using AI to generate content, marketing related content, right? We'll talk about scheduling and coordination, but donor cultivation and stewardship, right? Making sure that they feel that personalized touch. AI has the unique ability of pulling in somebody's entire history with the organization and creating crafted, tailored messaging that resonates with them. And we can talk about data enrichment and things like that. But again, I want to keep this fairly high level for most people because I know it's not a technical call. So I want to be aware of that. But you can see there that there's a number of areas across the entire organization where AI can be attenuated into that can build value. So how do we assess that? How do we get into what should I do, right? That's the big question that everybody always asks. It's like, okay, well, you've presented me all these options, but I don't even know where to begin. I don't know how to take this to ground. And I'm a big fan of Peter Thiel and 0 to 1 and the philosophy of going from ideation to creation. And so we do that with an impact and effort matrix. And so I'll walk you through kind of the process of how you build these out. But when we sat down and analyzed various different segments of that value chain map, and we looked at all of the different areas that AI can be plugged into, we started assessing what the impact and effort is. And effort can be understood as feasibility, right? How feasible is it to the organization? What's the impact of the organization? And there's workshops designed to help you work through these individually. Now, this is an example, and I will say some organizations, donor segmentation, the feasibility may be a 1. You may not have any data structure or any capability to be able to say, yes, absolutely, we can take this and we can start with it today. So this is an example showing you how you can measure impact and feasibility across the options of what you can implement with AI. But just know your organization is going to be different. And these numbers may be very different for you. For some organizations, building out a grant prospecting copilot may be really easy. You may have hundreds of databases that you have all the access to, and you can quickly find these things. Some of you may have none of that. So just know what's on screen is an example. And so I've picked about 10 here of things that you can pull in, right? Predictive food demand forecasting, right? For organizations like harvesters and those that provide food services back to the community, right? These are areas that you can pull into, right? United Way data and MARC data and things like that, pulling that in. For those of you working in the youth and foster care and the areas of highest impact that deal with children, right? Understanding things like at risk and dropout. And I'll have some case studies later that kind of talk about some of this stuff. But what can you do to enhance that, right? Most of us that work in that can feel and know and understand when somebody's at risk. But how do you take that out of just gut feel and emotion, put it into an algorithm that can start flagging that well in advance? One of the opportunities that I had the unique privilege of working on when I was on an engagement with Microsoft was we actually helped a school build a dropout AI algorithm that understood based off of attendance factors and how frequently they were late to class, things like their home environment. Did they have access to food? Was there food scarcity? All of these different things. We pulled in, I think, 500 or 600 different data points that were publicly available, that were available based off of school data sets, that were available based off of just general attendance tracking. We were able to pull all that together, and they were able to isolate and identify the students most at risk of dropping out between their junior and senior year by their freshman and sophomore year. So some as early as their sophomore year, some as early as their freshman year, some in their sophomore year. They could detect which students were at high risk of dropout that early on in their career and start creating both plans to get them back on track, but also take corrective measures that would allow them to be able to be more focused on their education. So that's just one use case where organizations can leverage data and AI to build algorithms that give them the insights that they need to make the actions that actually impact the mission down the road. So I want to pause there. I've done a lot of talking. I want to make sure there's no questions in the chat. Looks like there's not. Good. We'll keep moving. So this is what it looks like mapped out. So when we take those 10 different application ideas and we map them out to the organization, right, it gives us a quick view of where it falls on the impact and effort matrix and what we should and shouldn't be doing. So this is one of the big things that organizations are like, great, I made a list of ideas and I kind of have a concept of what the impact and effort is, but I don't know where to start. Well, you've obviously got quick wins, things that are high impact, high value, but yet don't take a lot of effort to implement, right? Those are going to be your quick wins. And then you can see there in this example, most everything fits in the high value and rapid value areas. Now, I will say that not every organization is going to be banded right along this perfect window of value. So just be aware that it may be pretty well spread out. And there may be things that you feel very passionate about that have low value to the organization. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time coaching on is just because AI can do it doesn't mean your organization should take it on. And this is a great way of quickly visualizing what the organization should and shouldn't take on. So security concerns, Virginia, great question. So security concerns, how do you deal with that, right? This is one of the things that we address all the time when we talk about data governance. Data governance is just as critical to AI as any other piece of it, if not more so. This is a prime example when we talk about things like sensitive data, HIPAA, health data, salary data, employee data, performance data. These are all areas of concern because one of the things I can tell you nobody wants to do is magically, reach out, start doing a chat and pull in somebody's salary data. That's a big risk, right? So data governance and data segmentation is really, really critical to being able to successfully mitigate security concerns. Hopefully that answers that question. Alicia, great question. Are funders using AI? It's a great question. I think, they are. How they're using it, I know the more prevalent ChatGPT becomes, allows people the ability, and Perplexity allows people the unique ability to ask what we call zero-shot questions or zero-click questions, where they can say, hey, is there any nonprofits in Kansas City that do X, Y, and Z? And rather than a Google search, now you have a comprehensive list of things that align directly with your mission. And you can go even further with that. As a funder, you can say, hey, these are the things I'm passionate in. Where can I best get involved? So we're seeing some of that, and I can dive into that a little bit more later once we get to the Q&A section. But hopefully that kind of answers that in the interim. Absolutely. So Alan, I will cover that shortly at the end. I'm happy to do that. And Diane, me, yeah, that's a great question. So this is geared really to mid-market nonprofits. So those in kind of that mid-market space, but smaller nonprofit and obviously larger nonprofits as well. But smaller nonprofits can capture this as well. It's just the runway for impact is very different for smaller nonprofits, right? You have to capture that ROI a lot quicker, and so you want to be very strategic in the opportunities when you create that list of opportunities that your organization can do. It's which ones have the highest value to the organization that are on the lowest effort side. So if I think about that, right, if I'm a smaller nonprofit and I'm trying to figure that out, right, I'm somewhere over here. What's the things that are going to move the needle on the mission the fastest, and how can I get them to ground? So really good question. Hopefully I answered that. I'm trying to keep pace with time and also keep up with the chat. But we'll get into Q&A a little bit later. So if I didn't answer that quite 100%, we'll dive into that. So this is, again, something that I like to bring up when I'm talking to nonprofits as well as for-profit organizations is a lot of people want to implement AI and they grab Gen AI tools off the shelf like ChatGPT, or there's a number of different AI tech tools that you can grab off the shelf. And they start just exploring, right? And then they go, okay, well, we want to add some of our own data to it. And so they add their own data foundations to it and they start getting more value and they start seeing, oh, wow, this is incredibly powerful. But then that's where they stop. And that causes a number of organizations to get limited value out of the organization or out of AI, excuse me. But then you move into that next phase that we call integrated, where you start looking at your core processes and how they align with what you're trying to accomplish. You look at people and skills. Change management is a huge part of this, right? How you train your staff to leverage AI to be mission critical, how you train them to use AI, and how you pull your own data in, and how you start melding all of those things together becomes really beneficial. That's where you start hitting that break even to positive territory. And then long-term high value clients will end up seeing a lot of value when they start tying that back to mission outcomes and impact, P&L, operating model governance, right? Making strategic decisions based off of the data that AI is giving you back. Now, again, caveats there being good data in, good data out, bad data in, bad data out. So be aware of that. The operating model and governance decisions can't happen until you have strong data foundations. And so that's a big caveat because a lot of organizations will start using it, start making strategic decisions based off of it. But that's a risk, right? You don't want to worry about that. So quick question. I want to, Tom, how are we doing on time? I forgot to start my timer.
Yep. We have about 25 minutes.
Perfect. Okay, good. We're doing good. So yeah, one question. What excites you the most about AI? And we'll see. Good. We've got a couple of responses coming in. Good. Possibilities, grants. Awesome. Good. Efficiency, growth. I like that. Efficiency is a big key one. Automation, optimization, eliminating redundancy. Story. Yep. I like that Microsoft snuck in there somehow. Workload reduction. Yeah, that's a great way to say that, right? How do we make our life easier? How do I accomplish more with the, I still get the same 8 hours of the day, but I need to do so much more. How do I do that? How do I take off those frontline tasks that maybe are bogging people down? Those are all good things. No, this is fantastic. So good. Well, we'll keep moving on here. So you can continue filling that in. Once everybody fills those in, the final deck will have obviously all of the responses. Now, for those of you on YouTube or watching this later, obviously at some point it'll stop. It'll stop updating. So when I make the final slide deck, it'll obviously be locked in. So how do we prioritize some applications? So we're going to take a look at 5 examples that organizations can leverage to really accelerate the value of AI. And so one of the things that we kind of assessed was donor segmentation, right? There's the low personalization. We can use generative copy, which is just using things like ChatGPT to generate personalized content directly for that individual. I won't go into what ML clustering is, but if you have questions about that and you want a little bit more technical dive, I'm happy to go into that. And then how do you measure it, right? Well, we measure donor segmentation by gift size. So these are examples. These aren't hard targets, but these are examples that organizations can use to say, okay, if we're going to go after donor segmentation, then we want to lift our gift size. Same thing, grant prospecting, right? Right now, it's all manual research. Somebody's got to sit down and do it, find it, write the grants. But then we can use RAG, and RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. It's just a fancy term for basically the AI is smart enough to be able to search data sources, pull that data back in before it responds. So for those of you who may be a little bit more knowledgeable about AI, there's a thing called hallucination. AI can get really, really good at sounding like it knows what it's talking about without actually knowing what it's talking about. So RAG is a way that the AI can leverage data outside of its training data to really understand what it's talking about. And so, for example, you can pull in databases like grant databases. You can actually pull in the grant documents themselves. So this is just a way for you to pull in external data. So reduction in research time, that's the target there, right? Overloaded staff with facts and questions and constant emails, and the same person asking 9 times what the policy is for something internally, right? Self-service resolution, you want to get to at least a target of 80%. If I can just go and ask, oh, what was the performance of this, or what was the mission impact of this, and I don't have to go read through a 30-page document to get that information, or go find a report, or go pull an Excel spreadsheet, or go to Power BI, or whatever tool you're using. If I can just ask a chatbot that and get that response quickly, but it's grounded in the evidence of the data that our organization has, that gives me what I need to know to go off and do what I need to go do, and I can go focus on something else. It also frees up the staff from answering mundane questions or questions that are constantly being answered. And so it allows you to pool a knowledge base so that donors, volunteers, staff members, constituents, all of those people have one centralized place they can go ask it questions. And to your point about security, this is where it's ultra critical, right? What's the policy on vacation, right, for staff members? Somebody might have to go to an old document, or maybe it's out of date, or maybe it's in a SharePoint library somewhere, or maybe it's just in somebody's email. Now it's, hey, what's the policy on vacation? Oh, it's 2 weeks, or this is what it looks like, or here's how you submit it, right? It's alleviating those one-off questions that people have to deal with. Things like impact data, storytelling, right? Slow cycle times, being able to pull back online. So yeah, we can absolutely move to Q&A. So let's go ahead and do that now. So Cindy, how do you want to handle that?
You can take I don't know if you need to share. I think, how you implement this is something that people were kind of talking about when you've been gone. So that's kind of, maybe that's what this is saying here, but that's kind of what I think we could start with.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the easiest ways to get started, as I mentioned earlier, is just understanding where the organization is at from a readiness perspective. And so this is one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing, is helping organizations start, right? It's assessing the organizational readiness, right? Do we have the skills? Do we have the change velocity, the leadership? And then from there, it's what's the business value? What's the outcome we're trying to accomplish? Whether that's increasing donations, increasing operational performance, gaining new ground, that's the second question you have to ask yourself. And then from there, it's, do we have the right data? Do we have the data quality, the data access, the data governance? Those are kind of the next questions that we like to assess. Understanding readiness and maturity are critical to implementation, because you can absolutely start. You can just go to ChatGPT and sign up for an account today and start feeding it information. But that's not going to be where organizations derive the most value from it. And so There's obviously the data readiness side. And finally, there's the infrastructure readiness. Do we have the right scalable technology, the right security? And there's a whole section about ethics, and we can talk about ethics at great length. There's a slide in here that talks about it, so you'll have that in the deck. But the easiest way for organizations to start and do this is simply by going through this framework to understand the core components of AI, what they can do with it, building their own list of tasks, building their own list of options that matter to their organization, and then rolling those out as pilots. Once you get a pilot, once you've tested it, once you see if it's deriving value to the organization, then scaling that up or expanding that out. Does that help answer that question? I know there was some questions about that. So this is how we do it, right? AI readiness workshops. So this is one of the things that we provide organizations. I want to make sure that I share that with the team here on the call today. This is something that we've developed for nonprofit organizations, where we sit down, we work with your organization to understand exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Then we build out those pilots. We take those top 5 use cases, we build out the 90-day action plan, we present that back, we give you the information you need to get to the board, and then take that and help you build it out. And so if you scan that QR code, that'll take you to a link. You can sign up for that. You can sign up for a quick call if you want to jump on the phone with us, ask us more questions, dive deeper into the technical side of it. Happy to take phone calls. If you scan that QR code, that'll at least take you there. You can schedule a phone call. We can have a one-off discussion about that. Other questions that are out there, and I want to make sure this slide
is there something that they can sort of just start to do, like tomorrow? Like, what could people start to do? I know some departments are doing things, other people are hesitant, they just don't know, are there things that you can start to get into here slowly and
yes,
a little
absolutely.
bit of
Absolutely. So starting with ChatGPT and understanding how to use just ChatGPT is a great way to start, right? How can I use it to generate content? How can I have it rewrite emails for me? How can I have it analyze spreadsheets and data, right? Those are all great use cases that you can start with. Simple things like they're free paying. So yeah, it depends, right? Deep research is part of the free plans now. A few months ago, it wasn't. So one of the things that I think a lot of you should try is deep research, and you can do that across Perplexity, across Gemini, across Chat, and across a number of different tools now. But deep research allows you to really, if there's heavy amounts of research reporting that you need to do, give that a try, right? Go to ChatGPT, start out, ask it for some information, then have it do a deep research project, right? I just helped a nonprofit organization make a decision on whether they were going to convert from a 501c4 to a 501c3. And there was a lot of question around tax compliance and risk and things like that. And so I had Chat build a research summary of all of the information as it related to legal precedent and how organizations make that transition and whether or not it's valuable. And so it spent a good half hour doing all the research for me. And trust me, nobody wants to go read IRC documentation and IRS literature, trust me. So I let Chat do the bulk of the heavy lifting on that. But those are examples, right? That's something critical that organization was trying to make a decision on, but yet they're not attorneys. They don't have the time to do that research. And by the end of it, they had a 50-page document that clearly outlined both the use case, the examples, the legal precedents, all of the information that they needed to make the right decision. Chat did in about a half an hour. And so it rapidly accelerated their ability to say, okay, we can make this decision now. We have the confidence. Yeah, Notebook LM is a great tool. That's another fantastic one. It's hard to keep up with all of the developments. So what about security and privacy when used? Yes, absolutely. Things that include PII, personal protective information, HIPAA data, GDPR data, for those of you who may be overseas, anything that's regulated data, do not put it in ChatGPT. Do not put it in any system that is not a part of your underlying technical infrastructure. And what I mean by that is, for those of you who are on the Microsoft 365 side of things or the Google side of things, if you're using Google, you can use Gemini inside of your corporate logins, inside of your organization's login. That data is secured and classified as non-trainable data. And what that just means is it's safe for you to use there. If you're on Microsoft, if you're using Bing or Copilot and you're signed into your org environments, then you can use those without risk of that data going outside. ChatGPT, unless you're on the enterprise or team plans of those, again, don't recommend that from a data governance standpoint. If it is protected, personalized, sensitive information, do not put it in chat. Do not put it in any form of a chat bot. Because again, that goes back to train the foundation model, so that becomes data that's accessible to everybody. You don't want to have information that's out there like that. So be aware, sensitive things, don't put it in ChatGPT, or sanitize it. I spend a lot of time sanitizing documents because I need to run certain things, whether it's privileged information, whether it's proprietary information. You can sanitize that information, and once it's sanitized, then you're free to do that. It does create an additional step, but it is valuable. How confident can I be on the research it provides? For example, I asked Copilot for a date in history, and the date it provided was wrong. It's a great question, Brenda. Always validate all of the sources. Now, they're doing a great job including all the source material into the responses now. I know chat is, especially with deep research, but again, you'll want to validate it. So thankfully, it provides you the original source. Go read the original source. I find a lot of times when I'm reading the original source, it actually has more information that I find valuable sometimes than what it put in the response. So it's also a great way to pull all that research together quickly so that you can read through it in a way that is valuable to you. So that's a great way for you to also validate if the data is accurate, right? Going back to that original source. So always would recommend that, and don't take it at first pass like it's the gospel, because it's certainly not. There's certainly times where it will hallucinate things and be very confident that things happened when they clearly didn't. So yeah, great point.
So Josh,
what other can I answer?
We've got a couple, just like 1 minute left, but
sorry, do you have any recommendations on how to like talk to staff or to get buy-in to staff from people that are hesitant to use it for both the privacy, security issues, also environmental issues, those sorts of things, to try and talk about risk reward?
Yes. Absolutely. So I'll kind of tackle those three, right? Staff buy-in's ultra critical. One of the things that first part of that readiness workshops tackles is both the staff's flexibility to adopt new technology and their willingness to change, right? Because change management's a critical part of AI adoption, right? They have to see it as a value to them before they'll accept it, right? And so we spend a lot of time coaching them on, this isn't here to replace you. This isn't here to take away your job. It's here to make your life easier. And when they start to see the value of what makes their life easier, it gives them the ability to get quick wins for themselves, that then they feel valuable and they feel valued by their employer, by the organization, and then they start using it more. And then in addition to things like environmental impact, Microsoft and which OpenAI and Microsoft are partnered together. Microsoft is 100% carbon neutral at this point, and so they spend a lot of time working on the ESG side of things. I'm happy to take a secondary phone call and dive deep into both the power constraints and the ESG side of AI, because that's a big concern. But there's a lot of ways to mitigate that, and I know Microsoft is doing a lot of that on the front end. So OpenAI is, I think, 76% carbon neutral at this point, and Microsoft is obviously the bulk of their data processing, and so they're going to continue their commitments to sustainability there. Power grid consumption aside, we can talk about that at a later date, but happy to dive into that more. So
all right. Yeah, we are at time. So Josh, thank you so much. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Thanks everybody for hanging with us, and we'll definitely talk to Josh about maybe doing a 2.0 version.
Yes,
everybody. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time today.